Hello, my fellow human light beings. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and I thought I would make a special video talking about my personal experience and transformation as a result of daily communication with higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings. And I'm going to talk to you about how daily communication with extraterrestrials has changed me on every level of my existence. Everything I thought about the spirit realm has completely changed. Everything I thought about the universe has completely changed. So hello and welcome to the channel. I'm especially interested in helping those of you who've been following my viral shorts lately. I know that my Facebook page, The Path of the Thunder Wizard, has been blowing up, and a lot of those videos are going viral. And one of the main things I want to convey to those of you who might be new to the channel is that everything that I'm talking about in these viral videos, this is not something that I have ever thought or believed up until within the past couple of years. And that is simply because I made the conscious decision to communicate directly with, at that time, extraterrestrial beings. I didn't know what higher dimensional beings were. And so I did CE5, which is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, protocols, which Dr. Stephen Greer was the person who really highlighted that and coined that phrase. And so I recommend that you check out all of his YouTube videos. His last name is Greer, G-R-E-E-R, Dr. Stephen Greer, and check out his website. He has a lot of information about things I can't talk about on YouTube or Facebook because they'll get me canceled. So what I'm going to focus on in this video is to really help you understand how incredibly bizarre and mind-expanding this experience continues to be. And the tightrope I have to walk to be able to continue to expand in this higher dimensional realm while still being a human being. And it's really the reason why I'm doing this work, because doing this work is what's keeping me sane. And I believe it's incredibly important because, part of the challenge is the third dimension is a program, it's a hypnosis, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as Earth was functioning normally, that was okay, but Earth is coming to an end. But we aren't getting the message because we are in the hypnosis, the three-dimensional self-created hypnosis, and our bodies are vibrating on the frequency of the third dimension. And so our mind and our body works very hard to keep us from expanding beyond this dimension. So anyway, I'm going to get into my personal experience because I think it's important that you understand that there's a human being behind all of these crazy things that I'm saying. And if you continue to follow what I'm teaching you, which is I'm giving you the tools to do what I'm doing. Look, let me be clear, as I've said before, I am not a prophet. I am not a psychic. I am not a channeler. I'm not a religious leader. I'm not creating a religion. I'm just a normal, fairly average person. Yeah, I've had some interests into esoteric things, but as I'll share with you, I've been fairly normal and practical. I'm just a normal person, and I don't talk about all this stuff because I think it makes me look good, because I know that it doesn't. I know that the average person thinks I'm a complete nut job. So I'm not doing this for my ego, because there's no ego gratification in this. I'm doing this because, when you find out something that's true, it's important that you tell people the truth. And so I'm not doing this for any kind of ego gratification. I'm doing it, number one, to stay sober. Number two, because it's the right thing to do. And number three, I would want to know. So that's why I'm here doing this. So anyways, I gave myself some notes so that I wouldn't go off onto too many tangents here. So let me give you a personal history so you know who I am. And, when you hear me say some of these outrageous things, just know that, coming from my history, this is not something that I would have said 2 years ago, much less 10 years ago. So my history is, I was born in 1963, right before, a month or two before Kennedy was assassinated. And I grew up in a normal, WASP, Anglo-Saxon, born-again Christian home. My mom at that time was just your basic homemaker. Now there was all kinds of dysfunction, as there really is in pretty much most waspy families, but we had our share of that. But on the surface, we were very normal. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was a very successful physicist. In fact, he worked for TRW and Hughes Aircraft, and he was part of the space race. If you've ever heard of the space race, in the 60s, the United States and Russia were racing to see who would get to the moon first. Well, my dad was a part of that, and in fact, he has satellites. He's dead now, but there are satellites, as far as I know. At least this was true a few years ago. There are satellites in the Smithsonian Institute that my father designed himself, and he was. It may still be true about him, but when I was in high school, even in college, he was able to claim that he had designed more satellites than any one man in the world. So just to give you a background, I grew up in a home where science was important, and my dad was a genius in his own way. In fact, at one point in time, he was up for or at least one of his superiors wanted to put him up for a Nobel Prize for physics. In any case, that's just to give you a little background on me. I myself am college educated. I spent 8 years in college. I got a BA, ended up being in theater arts, but I've since talked with people about all the things that I've studied and the books that I've written about certain things, language and history and things like that. I've had people tell me that you have a PhD level of education. So I'm an educated, college educated person. Just to let you know, I'm not one of these people that grew up in in a trailer somewhere and has been into conspiracy theories my whole life. Or that's just not who I was. So for me to be where I am, you have to understand how far the journey has gone, and you have to understand that for me to say the things that I'm saying, I know how outrageous they are, and hopefully that will give some weight to it. I don't say any of the things I say on here lightly. I'm a passionate person, and when I feel passionately about it, I speak passionately, but it doesn't mean that I'm speaking about it cavalierly. I'm not. So I'm an educated person. I got a college degree. I've got the equivalent of a PhD level education, and that's been told to me numerous times by tests and other people that have told me that same thing. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you my mindset. I am a person, I have taught critical thinking. So I'm not only am I a believer in critical thinking, but I teach people how to be critical thinkers. So in other words, I don't operate just from impulse and emotion. I carefully analyze everything and I weigh it up against what I think, what I believe, what the evidence is. Back in the past when I would denounce people for their tinfoil hat beliefs, which I now, of course, believe the majority of them, except for things like flat earth and things like that, which aren't real. But a lot of things that I didn't think existed, I now believe. But anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm a critical thinker, and what I teach is what I was going to say is that, in the past, people have said, do your research. And I would say research doesn't mean that you simply consume beliefs and information inside of an echo chamber, which is the vast majority of people like flat earthers who say, do your research. What they really mean is go into this particular echo chamber and just consume the information that we're going to select and shove down your throat. And because people have read, 1 billion articles on flat earth, they think that they've done research. A critical thinker immediately says, I must investigate without any bias both sides of the argument. And so I do that. And in fact, I will try and disprove something before I choose to believe it. That is, what happened. That is why I now not only believe in extraterrestrials, it's why I communicate with them on a daily basis. I put a huge amount of effort to prove that they didn't exist. And the effort that I put into that, in fact, it took me a long time before I woke up, and they finally, gave me so much higher dimensional experience that I had no choice but to accept the truth of the matter. But the reason for that is because I kept going after it. I kept testing it and testing them to prove that they didn't exist. And when you do that with a force that will respond and wants to prove to you that it does exist, eventually, one of those things has to give. So I'm a critical thinker is my point. I'm not somebody who operates solely from emotion or solely from impulse. If I have an emotional agenda to a belief, I admit it. And so, you can have an emotional agenda and still be right. So there's nothing wrong with being passionate about what you believe and wanting for what you believe to be true. But what most people do is they have an emotional attachment, a strong emotional agenda for what they believe to be right, flat earthers. And that emotional agenda blinds them from any information that might show them that what they believe is false. So I'm somebody that has gone out of my way, and I continue to go out of my way. Just because I have an emotional agenda and I don't want to believe something doesn't mean that I'm not open to have my mind changed by undeniable evidence. And some of the beliefs if you look, you'll see on my channel, I was wrong about. So point I'm trying to make is I've come to this conclusion, through absolute total, at least an attempt to be self-examining and to be willing to know the truth, not to be happy. I want to know the truth more than I want to be comfortable. So, I'm a teacher of critical thinking skills. In terms of my spiritual background, I was born in a Christian home, and I was very devoutly Christian as a little kid. I had powerful spiritual experiences. I really believed in Jesus Christ. I believed in the Gospels, and I believed in salvation through Jesus. And in fact, I became a Christian minister after sowing my oats in high school and rebelling. At age 18, I came back full force into that religion, so much so that I was going to go to seminary. In fact, I studied the Bible in Greek, and so I could read the Bible in the original, at least the New Testament in its original language. There's nothing anybody can say to me about the Bible that I haven't either heard or seen or known. So when I talk about the Bible and the validity and the truthfulness of the Bible, it's not coming from my feelings. It's coming from somebody who spent a huge amount of their time at seminary level analysis of that. So I was devoutly born again Christian. I ended up leaving that religion. And I didn't leave that religion because I stopped believing in it. I left that religion, I won't get too deep into the experience, but bottom line is that just because I was born again Christian didn't mean I didn't have friends who weren't. And what I found, which really messed with me, was that my Christian friends and colleagues and community, they were incredibly judgmental. And this is not just one particular church, this is across the board. And I found them to be very fickle. And I found the whole church thing to be really about, who looks good. And, there was a lot of lies and corruption and people, I followed the path. I completely, totally devoted myself to the path, and I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't cheat, I didn't have premarital sex. I followed that. And then I found that the vast majority of people didn't follow their own religion, but they went to church and talked about it, and they badmouthed anybody that didn't believe the way that they did. So I had that experience, and then I had experience with people who were non-Christians, who were my friends, who weren't saved, and they accepted me. They're like, I'm not into your religion, but you're my friend and I love you. And they would walk in front of the bus. And when I realized that I trusted my non-Christian friends more than I trusted the people in church, I realized that something was wrong. And when I started thinking about my non-Christian friends going to hell simply because they didn't believe in the correct religion, that started me thinking on what is the logic behind God creating his own children and then throwing them into hell for being mistaken. And realizing that no matter how many times you say from the pulpit that Christianity is forgiveness by grace and you can't do any works, and then you find out that the Bible contradicts itself numerous times, that Jesus looks people in the face, according to the New Testament, and says to people who came to him and said, Lord, Lord, I cast out demons in your name. In other words, I believed that you were the Savior, which is what you're told. You're told that the only thing you have to do is believe that Jesus is the Savior and you'll be in for eternity. So according to that same New Testament, at the end, the judgment day, Jesus will be sitting there and people will come to him and say, Lord, Lord, I cast out demons in your name. I healed people. Again, if you're a Christian, you can't heal somebody without God's power. So we're talking about people who believed in the right religion and had enough access, supposedly, to God's power that they could cast demons out and heal people. And according to that verse, Jesus will say to them, I never knew you, get away from me. And those people will be dragged into hell. So not even the people who do the one work, because Christianity says it's salvation without works, but there is one work, and that one work is you have to choose to believe in that religion, and you have to choose to believe in the correct interpretation of God. That's a work. And if you do that, you get into the club. But even those people who do that, it's not good enough. When I started realizing that that was a lie, the whole idea that it's salvation by grace, and I realized it wasn't a salvation by grace, and then I realized that if you put God, the story of Jehovah, the God who created everything, and then he created man in his own image, and for some reason we don't know, man ended up being imperfect, and for some reason we can't really explain, man decided to break God's commandment. And let's be clear, the commandment that God got upset about was, you're not allowed to find out who you are. Don't eat of the fruit and become aware of yourself. And what's happened? They ate the fruit and they realized they were naked. What's wrong with being naked? That's your true self. So as soon as they became aware of who they were and they had shame, God kicked them out. And so God was so furious that he tried to destroy human beings, and now he throws them into hell if they don't have the right religion. And of course the whole brutality of Jehovah taking his supposed perfect sinless son and pouring out all of his rage, which again, here he is, the God of the universe, and he's filled with rage over his own children who aren't perfect. He's supposed to be the God of love. That he takes all of that rage and he pours it out on some innocent guy who hasn't done anything. And then again, according to the New Testament, the only way he can tolerate looking at his own children is if he smears the blood of his innocent son that he murdered. If he smears the blood of his son onto those other children, he can tolerate looking at them and he'll allow them into heaven. Now I know the Christians are going to go back and forth and try and explain why that's okay and why you don't understand. And trust me, there's nothing you've said that I haven't heard, because I used to say those same things. Remember, there's nobody that knew more about the Christian religion than I still do. But so when you compare the behavior of Jehovah with a psychopathic murderer, they're identical. The only difference is Christians give Jehovah a pass because he's more powerful than humans. And they say things like, we can't question God. God's ways are not our ways. But if a human being did what Jehovah did, we would lock them up. In fact, we would execute them. And when I critically thinking without any bias and not allowing my emotional attachment to that religion sway my belief, when I looked at that, I said, I can't worship this God. I still believed that he existed, but I couldn't worship him. And so I left that religion. Now, of course, I went through deprogramming because Christian religion is a cult. It's the most powerful cult in the world, second only to Islam and Judaism. And so after years of deprogramming, I was able to finally let that go. But I want you to understand, those of you who, all the people on Facebook, not that you're going to listen to me, but the majority of comments on Facebook are coming from Christians calling me all kinds of things. I'm worshiping demons, etc., etc. And again, I'm an exorcist. I looked demons in the face and I used the name of Jesus and I saw people transform into demons and I cast those demons out in the name of Jesus. You might ask how I did that, and I've made videos about why that works, because the truth is I came to find out that every other religion that does exorcism, whatever means they use, they're exactly as successful, even though Christians will tell you otherwise. But the truth is that a Taoist, a Hindu, a Buddhist, they're able to cast out demons with the same level of power, and they use different ideas in their head. And so it's really not about the name of the God, it's about you operating from your trust in the universe, which you could call faith in God. So I know what demons are. Those of you who say I'm worshiping demons, I've looked demons in the face and I know the difference. So that's where I came from with that, just to let you know. Of course, then later, as I got out of that, I started researching all kinds of other spiritual practices like Taoism, like Hinduism, even Sikhism, shamanism, Yoruba, West African, polytheist stuff. I mean, I've looked at pretty much everything. And now with that experience, I can look back and tell you that a lot of the things I was told by Christians just isn't true about other religions. You won't know that unless you figure it out experientially. So the one thing you should know about me is I never talk about anything that I don't have personal experience in. So again, you don't know me, now you do. And if what I'm saying about all this stuff is striking a chord in you and you're feeling like there's something I'm saying that's making you interested, or a part of you says, I think I've always known that to be true, just know that it's coming from somebody. I'm not a new age, person that's just running away. I'm not all love and light running away from things and using this experience like many do to bolster their codependent denial and their delusions and their, self-referential fantasies. I'm really not one of those people. I'm really a scientist and an explorer and a detective. I look at the evidence, and then if I can't back up the evidence with personal experience and practical expression in the real world, if those things don't line up, I don't talk about it. So everything I talk about comes from that experience. You can believe me or agree with me or disagree with me, it's fine, but at least you know where I believe I've come from. So I did not believe in extraterrestrials. During the 80s, if you were alive in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. If you were born in the 90s or later, you probably won't know why this is important. But we started hearing about alien abductions in the 70s, actually in the 60s, but it really started gaining strength in the 70s. And by the 80s, alien abductions was a huge thing. That's why the first South Park cartoon is about Cartman being anally probed. Because in the 80s, alien abductions was huge. And there were movies that were made about it, there were TV shows that were made about it, and of course, probably the most famous is Whitley Strieber's books and his movies, or movie, Communion. And I watched all of those, I read all of those books, and the pseudo-spirituality of all of it really got me hooked into it, but I never got over the abuse of the abduction experience. Now, I've never been abducted. I was very afraid of that whole thing, but I'd never been abducted. But when I really thought about it, I wanted to try and do what a lot of people still do, which is they spiritualize the abuse that happens during these alien abductions. And I wanted to spiritualize that. And I could never really get myself to do it. And as time went on, I got less and less interested in that, and I got involved in a bunch of other things. But every time I thought about it, I could never really let go of the part of me that said that the abuse doesn't make sense. Why would more advanced, more spiritually advanced beings do anything without, against people's approval? Why would they sexually abuse them? The whole idea of aliens needing human DNA because they're falling apart. That betrays a spiritual malady. If really there is some alien race out there whose DNA is falling apart and they need to go and extract it from other races, think past that. It means that they're not connected to the spirit. It means that the spirit of the universe is not keeping them healthy. And I can tell you, again, from all of my experiences and my knowledge, when you're connected to the spirit, you're healthy. And that doesn't matter if you're a planet or a plant or a species or an animal or a conscious being like a human being or supposed aliens. If aliens really are dying, it means that they're not connected. And then you take that further, common sense, sorry, it's raining on my roof here. Common sense tells you that these beings can't be real because the universe wouldn't allow higher dimensional beings to be this dysfunctional. Now, I could take time to explain it. You can choose to accept it, but you can trust me on that. This is how the universe works. The universe doesn't work against itself. So to have beings evolve to that level and have them be physically, psychologically, and emotionally warped and damaged to the degree that they feel it's okay to abduct people, sexually abuse them, emotionally, psychologically abuse them, experiment on them, use them for whatever other breeding purposes. If humans were to do that, you would say those are evil, psychopathic people. So it's again, the reason why alien abduction has this religion behind it is because of the Christian religion, where people do the same thing with Jehovah. Jehovah is a psychopathic murderer, and if a human were to act the way Jehovah act, we would lock them up and or kill them. But because it's him, we say, oh, it's okay, he's God, which is again what the victims of abuse do, the Stockholm syndrome. So human beings, Christians have Stockholm syndrome. They justify the abuse of the parent, the God that they worship. So I kind of forgot what my point was, but anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that when you really examine it, the whole idea of aliens abducting doesn't work. It falls apart from a theological and physical, a science perspective. It falls apart because no functioning organism survives if it works against itself. Anyway, so let's keep going. So just to let you know, before I did CE5, I had decided that aliens didn't exist. And the conclusion for that was because when I thought aliens were those beings that abducted. And as I went through that same, I won't repeat myself, came to the conclusion that these beings can't be real because the universe doesn't create that. It doesn't work that way. But when I thought about it more from a scientific perspective, my third dimensional understanding, which of course has completely changed, but my third dimensional understanding was that nothing can go faster than the speed of light. And there's no way that aliens from Zeta Reticuli, for example, could travel to Earth in one lifetime. So if any aliens were coming to Earth, it would take them thousands, if not millions of years, and that's just not feasible. So it's not possible. Even if they were going the speed of light, it would take them thousands or millions of years to get here. So I realized that was just from a third dimensional perspective, which is all I understood. It's impossible. And so I just decided that aliens didn't exist. And the combination of that knowledge plus the internal awareness from a spiritual perspective that the aliens that have been presented to me, that abduct and experiment, the universe wouldn't allow a higher, a more advanced society like that continue. They would cease to exist. Just like humanity is on the verge of ceasing to exist because humanity is doing things like, I won't list all the things I can't talk about on YouTube, but the things that like nuclear war and even conventional war, all of that stuff is if we continue to advance in our knowledge and our technology, but our morality and our spirituality doesn't catch up, it is just a self-evident fact that humans will destroy themselves. So the same would be true for any other civilization anywhere. So that was the reason why I didn't believe in ETs. Having said that, I won't get into it, but because again, I can't talk about it on YouTube, but all the crazy things that started happening around 2020, 2021, with the pandemic and the lockdowns, I realized that something was wrong and that the world was not, in terms of the world, the governments, the political structure, the infrastructure of the world was not what I thought it was. I knew that there was corruption in the world, and I knew that humans were imperfect, and I knew that governments and political structures, even democracy, was imperfect. There were, all that. But when I saw what was happening, and there was, because of this, again, things I can't talk about, it became revealed to me that there was an undercurrent. There really was a financial cabal, at the very least, working with big pharma and big tech that was far more expansive than anything I even thought possible. And so I had to get over my attachment to the belief in the goodness of human beings, because I really did believe, and still do, human beings at their core, if you give them an opportunity, are good. If you give them love and raise them with love, that they will become good people. And so I believed that governments, especially the United States, democracy was run by people who had this. They were imperfect and corrupt, but they wanted what was right for everybody. And when I came to realize the evidence was showing something else, that there was a level of corruption and evil that was running the world, even if they were a minority, they had so much power, they were running everything. That completely changed my understanding. And then that opened up, when it came to a specific medication that was safer than aspirin. And when that specific, extremely safe medication became criminalized to the point where doctors were having their licenses taken away from them in multiple Western countries, which are supposed to be the most advanced in medicine, for prescribing a completely safe medicine that we're told was ineffective. And my experience is, if you go to the doctor and you're sick and you say, can I take this herb, like can I take ginseng or can I take vitamin C? The doctor will say, well, it won't do anything, but it won't hurt you. If you want to do it, go ahead. It's not gonna interfere with your treatment. Go right ahead. this was one of those scenarios. And when I saw that being criminalized, I knew something was up. And then it just, once I started, tearing away that wallpaper to see what was underneath, and the whole thing collapsed. And I was so disillusioned just from a physical perspective about how the world worked. And that was incredibly, that destroyed me on all kinds of levels, because I didn't know, how to hold myself up with that. Now, while all this is going on, I am having dreams that I couldn't explain. And I had, and there's a video, if you go back to 2020 or 2021, before, all of this CE5 thing came about, you will hear me talk about a dream that I had. And again, this is somebody who doesn't believe that extraterrestrials existed. I didn't believe any of that. If they did, they were so far away, they couldn't get to us. And I certainly, again, I didn't have an understanding of higher dimensions. I had experienced higher dimensions with the Taoist practices that I've done, with the yoga practices, the mantra practices, the meditation, but I didn't have enough understanding like I do now to know that what I was doing was I was going to higher dimensions and pulling in higher dimensional energy. And in fact, all of the ancestors who teach, who channeled this knowledge, yoga, Tao practice, Qigong, meditation, mantra, runes, I have since come to realize that these practices have been downloaded to humans from guess who? Higher dimensional extraterrestrials, and who have been working with us. Now, so I'm jumping ahead, so let me jump back. So I started having dreams, and I had one dream, and I won't get into the symbolism, but I felt the energy of it, and it was very clear that dream I had was a shamanic dream. It was not a normal dream. And I talked about it in a video, and I even said, I think aliens are coming to Earth. I can't shake that feeling. Why is that? And then somebody wrote in the comment, I had the same dream. So that dream came and went, and I didn't pay any attention to it because I don't attach to my spiritual experiences. I don't get emotionally attached. I log them away and go, that's interesting, and we'll see what happens with that. And I did that with this, and I logged it away, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And then during the whole lockdown thing, I started getting the feeling that something else was up, something not only on a political level, but on a spiritual, dimensional level, that something was up. And I had this fear that if aliens exist, maybe aliens created COVID, and so I started like flipping out on that. And that was a weird place to be because I didn't even believe in that. So the result of that fear, which of course I'm telling you that didn't happen, aliens didn't create COVID, just to let you know. That raises the question of how COVID did come about, which you can research on your own. But because of that, something was just bugging me, and something wasn't right, and something about aliens didn't feel right. And I started looking into it, and I looked into the stuff that I knew, like the Whitley Strieber stuff, and I started thinking again about alien abductions, and and that's what I thought aliens were. I thought they were those beings that came and abducted you. I thought they were the little gray guys that ran around and poked you with needles and stuck things up your rear end. That's what I thought aliens were. And I was open to take a look at that again and see whether or not that was true. I was against the idea of them. I didn't like them, and I thought that they were perhaps a negative influence. And then I saw the work of Dr. Stephen Greer. I'd looked at his work early on, years before, and made the conclusion that he was a nutcase because, again, I didn't realize that mainstream media is coerced to do things, and it's a script. But somebody had made some television show or some documentary, and they only focused on him. He had this skeleton of a small being that looked like an alien, and he was looking to see what I guess he took it in for lab results. And anyway, according to that program, it turned out to be a human infant, and this crazy guy. And I just decided this guy was nuts. And then they took him out of context, and they showed him crying, holding this little thing. And I said, yeah, this guy's a nutcase. Of course, I believed in something called an independent media, which doesn't exist, I know now. I believed that it did. I believed in independent journalism, which on the mainstream level doesn't exist, but I believed that it did. So I was able to be coerced and manipulated into believing something that wasn't true, and because that's what the mainstream does. When somebody goes against the narrative, the mainstream media, as they've done with recent people like Russell Brand, they've tried to destroy his reputation. I didn't know that they did that, so I wrote off Dr. Stephen Greer because I was allowed to be manipulated that way. But because of this whole thing, I started looking at everything. I did what I said I do. I look at things on both sides of the argument. I don't let my emotional attachments or my emotional agendas stop me from researching any argument, and I look at the facts and the evidence. And I started watching Stephen Greer's stuff very skeptically, and then I saw his movie Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And when I saw the photographic evidence, if you haven't seen it, it's free on YouTube, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Go watch it on YouTube. You can also watch it on Prime Video for free and other places like that. So go watch that. I watched that, and the photographic evidence blew my mind. And when he explained what extraterrestrials were, and he started talking about the trans-dimensional nature of them, which of course got my attention. I didn't really understand it, certainly not from a deeply experiential point of view, but I didn't realize I had experienced it. I just didn't know what it was. But when I saw those experiences, and then I realized that if what he's saying is true on this movie, then the beings that I've always wanted to work with, because something you should know about me, I skipped a big thing. After I left Christianity, a couple of years later, I was introduced to a very secret, powerful, esoteric sect of Taoist, energetic and martial arts. And one of the things they did is they did exorcisms with this power. It wasn't like using the name of Jesus. It was actually like channeling energy from the universe and using it to literally fight negative beings with your bare hands. And so I was very interested in that because I had been an exorcist, and even though I wasn't a Christian, I knew that demons existed. And so I got to the edge of that training, and I went as far as I could with that, so much so that I ran into the politics and the corruption and the egos of my teachers. And long story short, I ended up getting kicked out of the sect because I was too much of a threat, because I was starting to do things and I was starting to go beyond their knowledge in certain areas, not in all of them. I certainly didn't have some of the power that they had physically, but I was going beyond them in other areas, and it was such a threat to their egos that they kicked me out of the sect. And the end result is that I had all this training that I wanted to learn. I'd learned everything I could learn from them, but I knew there was more to learn, and I looked around and I couldn't find anybody that had the power to teach me. And when I saw Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and I saw what these beings were doing with average people, I said, those are the beings I want to learn from. So I did Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, not just to prove to myself that ETs existed, which was my first interest, but then I said, if these guys exist, I want to learn from them. I want them to teach me. I want that kind of spiritual power. And I thought that I was being, too haughty about that, and that if they existed, they wouldn't, give me what I asked for. But I was completely blown away. So I've talked about it at length in my books, which you can get at michaelwilliamdenny.com. You can read the first 3 CE5 experiences and what happened. But long story short, the first 2 CE5 experiences, I was successful. I got video and audio evidence of a higher dimensional being that was communicating with me and interacting with me. But my 3rd dimensional hypnosis was so strong I couldn't believe it. When literally lights were flying around me and beings were talking to me, and I got this on digital, a digital recorder and a video recorder. While I was there, I saw nothing and I heard nothing. There were things that were coming out of my intuition which I was batting away. I wasn't listening to that because my third dimensional shell was too thick. And so it wasn't until the 3rd CE5 encounter, and bear in mind, just because I wasn't successful the first time and the second time, actually I just talked myself out of it, but I was going to prove to myself one way or the other, and I had an intuition that these beings existed, and I said, I am going to be successful at this. So I'm telling you that if you're doing interdimensional meditation or CE5 and things aren't happening according to how you expect it, I guarantee you stuff is happening. You're just not seeing it or you're not open to it. So keep working at it. But the message that I sent out to them was, look, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to die if that's what it takes to find out what you are, if you exist. And what I've come to learn since about extraterrestrials is that they want you to succeed in your spiritual practices, whatever they are. And they want you to know them. If you want to know them, they will do whatever they can, literally everything they possibly can, including breaking through dimensional barriers and warping space-time in order to get to you. But you have to want it. And I wanted it more than I wanted my sanity or my health or even my life. And so as a result of that, the 3rd time around, and you can see it on my YouTube video, How I Became an Extraterrestrial. And of course I write about it in my books and I've talked about him. A 7-foot tall, I believe he is, I could be wrong, I believe he is a 7-foot tall red mantis being. He showed up and he initiated me. He put a finger on the top of my crown and all kinds of crazy things happened. You can watch the video and find out and read about it. But I've never been the same since then. But it almost killed me. Now, I'm not saying if you reach out to ETs, you're going to have that experience. That's just the kind of person I am. It almost killed me. And I almost went insane. Because I have such a strong, practical, 3-dimensional mind. That mind that has a PhD level of college education. That mind that, lived under the roof with, one of a genius physicist. A person who, has grown up in Western society, very intellectual. That part of me could not comprehend what I had experienced and what I was being told. And my brain broke. So much so that I gave myself frozen shoulder. Thankfully, I knew how to heal myself from it. But, I can still feel it. What I did to myself, my right side, my left brain broke because it couldn't understand what was happening. But thankfully, my ET friends gave me exactly what I asked for, and I don't regret any of it. But it's been an incredible struggle, holding myself together in the 3rd dimension and being as deep into the 5th dimension as I am. They come and talk to me on a daily basis. Lately the messages are very supportive. They come to me and they tell me how much they love me, appreciate me, respect me. How can we help you? They give me tons of powerful, loving energy. But in the beginning, these beings were doing that. They were giving me all kinds of love, which is a whole other subject in and of itself, and energy. I don't mean physical love, energetic love. And then they were showing me and telling me about really quantum physics and what quantum physics is for them in the fifth dimension, which is if you take third dimensional quantum physics, that's kindergarten, and they're starting to tell me about things far beyond that. And so I had a really hard time staying in this reality. At the same time, I've written about it and talked about it, but they took me to fifth dimensional energies. And what I mean by that is they shifted my frequency up, which my Kundalini went crazy, and the DMT in my brain went, skyrocketed off the chart. But I was completely in my third dimensional physical body. And so I know, I at least have an idea of what it's going to feel like in 5D. They took me there twice, and when ETs do something twice, it means they're trying to prove to you, get it into your brain. If they do something 3 times, it's because they're trying to transform you, help you transform yourself. So I've been to 5D twice, so I can't deny that that's a reality in terms of the frequency. So all this was going on during my first 3 months after that first successful ET encounter. What I've come to learn, which is incredibly important, which you may not understand until you experience it. It's one thing to listen to me or somebody else and intellectually understand it. That's one thing. It's another thing to actually experience it on an energetic level. That is not something your intellect can prepare you for. There's no amount of that. The only thing that you can do is prepare yourself to know that you're going to experience something beyond anything you could possibly imagine. So I recommend if you want to pursue this as much as I did, and you want to have the same kinds of transformative experiences that I did, that you at least accept that what you're about to do is going to destroy everything you think you know about everything, and that there's nothing that can adequately prepare you for the experience, and you won't know it until you experience it. This is why when I listen to people, I know if they, I listen to people who claim to be channels for ETs, and I can tell within the first 5 seconds whether or not they've actually communicated with a higher dimensional being. I can tell right away. And that's true. It wouldn't just me. Anybody who's had it, they would know. Just like anybody who's had any intense experience. You served in the military and you saw action. You can see it in their eyes. Now, I've never been in the military and I've never seen action. So if I tried to pretend like I did, a real battle-hardened soldier would, I'm a great actor, but they would figure out pretty quick that this guy doesn't know, because you can look in somebody's eyes and you can tell. And that's what experience gives you. So if you really want to have this experience with higher dimensions, push for it hard, and then when you do, you'll say things like, I can't adequately put into words in the third dimension what I just experienced. The point I'm slowly getting to is that the third dimension is a closed environment, and this realization is the key to understanding what is coming, and it is key to being able to survive this current 3D experience and to understand what ETs are trying to tell you. This third dimensional reality, which we think is infinite, when we look out into space, we think the universe is infinite. It's actually a closed environment. It's like a fishbowl. It's like a fishbowl with a mirror inside of it. You look into the mirror and you think it goes on forever, but it doesn't. This is a closed environment, and you can't, with any 3D technology, with any 3D science, even math and physics, you cannot access those higher dimensions. Physics, the best that quantum physics can do is to say there's evidence we think it exists and we think it might work like this, but that's why they call it theoretical physics, because you can't ever prove it. And just like, is there life after death? Well, people say that they've died and come back, but a doctor will say, well, yeah, of course, they died and all the DMT was released in their brain and they had, something that happened in their brain, but they didn't die, did they? They're back. So what they had was, the nervous system and the brain and the blah, 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 and they had an experience, but that doesn't mean that they died. Because you can't. In the third dimension, you cannot prove anything in the fifth dimension. You can only point at evidence for it. And that will never change because it's a closed environment. So trying to figure this out with your intellect is a complete waste of your time. The only way that you can experience it is through your experience. Once you've experienced it and you try and tell other people, if they don't want to believe it, there's nothing you'll be able to do to prove it to them. Nothing. This is why people understandably think I'm crazy. The other thing to know about the third dimension is that the third dimension is a self-referential system that's designed to keep itself going. And any information that comes in that starts to dismantle that self-referential system, that information is attacked. Just like in, what is that movie? Anyway, I can't remember names of people in movies when I'm talking because my brain goes. In something else. Anyway, the guys that go deeper into dream levels. Well, in that movie, they're in a dream level and they're walking around, and when the person that's been brought into the dream level starts looking at all of the NPCs in the dream, they start to focus on her and they seek to attack her, like blood cells, like white blood cells attacking an invader. So when information, I'm still trying to remember the name of that movie, when information comes into our third dimensional reality that goes against the self-referential, self-reflecting third dimensional reality, everybody in it seeks to destroy that. That includes humans. That includes your own mind. So when you come back from higher dimensional experiences or higher dimensional beings interact with you, the first thing that's going to happen once that energy leaves you, because you'll be like, oh my God, this is so amazing, and I'll always know this is true. And then as soon as that energy leaves you, it's sort of like you wake up. Really, you're going to sleep again, but you feel like you're sort of waking up into the third dimension, and you go, what just happened can't be possible. I think I made that up. When you talk about these things, as I do, if you want to go look at the comments, I just barely sometimes check out the comments on the Facebook page, but the trolls that are coming after me, the stuff that they say about me is so horribly cruel, but I understand what's happening. It's the white blood cells of the third dimension in the minds of other people attacking me, because if anything I say is even the slightest bit true, it will, and they accept it, and they're able to accept it and able to hear it, which of course they won't without experience. But if they do, it'll destroy their understanding and reality will come apart, and that feels like death. So that's the biggest thing to understand, that if you want to experience this, and if you want to shift up to 5D, understand that shifting up to 5D isn't going to feel normal and natural. ETs came to me a while back, and they said that people are going to think that you died. And then they started telling me about me shifting up to 5D, and I got hung up on people think I'm going to die. And I started thinking, am I going to be, I contacted people I knew, and I said, I'm just letting you know, people who know that I do this, I'm just letting you know, this is what they told me. So, if I keel over dead, you know why. And I'm just letting you know ahead of time. That didn't happen yet, but what I've come to understand is that the third dimension will justify its own existence. And if anything happens that doesn't fit within the third dimension will erase and recreate it. That's what the Mandela Effect is, in case you want to know. The Mandela Effect is that the third dimension is shifting to a lower dimension. And so that means that's why some of the history is changing. That's why things are getting worse in some of the history. Like the Black Tom event, which I can tell you never happened, but it is a far worse event. It talks of a much worse world. And Kennedy's car, him being shot not in a 4-seater, but in a 6-seater. That is a more militant world. So the past is adjusting itself, getting ready to shift down to a lower, more violent, more, a lower vibrational world. The history is changing itself to meet the mindset that is coming for those that won't shift up. So understand that this information that's coming to us will be erased. For those that stay in the lower third dimensional, that stay with the fear and with the corruption and with the lies and with the deceit because they want to be part of the narrative and because they allow the third dimension to hypnotize them, what will happen is, if there is an event, if there is a solar flash event that everybody sees and experiences, what will happen? Those that choose not to go, their memories will either be erased or completely changed. So much so that they might even remember, if you shift up to 5D, if they choose to stay, what will happen, who knows how long, the way they will remember it is, oh yeah, that person died. Yeah, I went to their funeral. Oh yeah, their body. There might even magically appear a headstone with your name on it. So, that's how bizarre and crazy things are. When you really start to accept what ETs are saying, which is that this world is nothing more than an expectation and a projection of your expectation. If you really believe that, that means everything, including the past and the future, is nothing more than a projection. Nothing. Including where we live. So shifting out of this world to another world, which spiritual masters have been doing for thousands of years, it just means that they were able to, who knows what, because I haven't, to my knowledge, gotten there yet. They were able to expect a different reality, and they shifted out of this one and went to another one. So the point of all that is to understand, it's really important to understand when ETs come to talk to you, they are beings outside of the fishbowl in another dimension, which we would call more close to true. And they're trying to help you wake up and leave the game. And so they can't just show up and sit down and have coffee with you, at least to my knowledge. I could be wrong about this, but I don't think they can. Because I really believe that ETs are doing literally everything they possibly can to help me, and I still struggle with this. It takes a lot of commitment and effort to stay with them. And I am committed to that. And as long as I'm committed, they're committed with me. The other thing that you don't know about yet is that you have a destiny. You have a karmic destiny in the next world. And if you open up to that, to ETs and work with them, they will start to tell you about the world that you're going to and the destiny that you have. And when they tell you that, it will mess with you. If I told you on paper who you're supposed to be, you would go, oh my God, that sounds amazing. But it's one thing for me to tell you intellectually. It's another thing for a higher dimensional energy to come and tell you who you are in a world that isn't this world, in a dimension that isn't this dimension. And what will happen is that self-referential third dimensional program will try and talk you out of it. And so one of the first experiences you'll have is you'll think that they're lying to you. You'll start thinking that they're out to get you, that they're abusing you, and then you'll stop and go, wait a second, all they've done is be nice to me. All they've done is love me. Why am I feeling this way? It's because, Inception, that's the movie. Like in the movie Inception, when you're in somebody else's unconscious and you become aware that you're in somebody else's unconscious, the unconscious comes after you. When it realizes you're not part of that dream, it tries to destroy you. So that's what your brain will do. Your brain will come at you and emotionally try and, you'll respond all kinds of really irrational ways to this. And again, if you've experienced it, you're nodding your head, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't experienced it, you'll go, that wouldn't happen with me. If I saw an ET in a higher dimension, I felt all that love, and they told me I was a god in another dimension, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Well, that's how I know you haven't experienced it. Because it's not possible to be a third dimensional being and be introduced to the fifth dimension and not have some kind of, internal reaction at the very least that makes you think you've lost your mind. Bear in mind, crazy people don't think they've lost their mind. Sane people question their sanity when something happens that's outside of their narrative. So if you feel like you're going insane, trust me, that means you are sane. And that's, again, evidence that it's real. What we're talking about is something real. Again, do I come off to you like somebody who's crazy? Do I come off to you like somebody who's emotionally or psychologically unhinged? Do I come off to you as somebody who's deluded and psychopathic? Maybe I do. I don't think I do. It's because I'm not. I don't think I am. But it sure feels like it sometimes. So the third dimension is a closed environment, and ETs are doing their best. Everything they do, if go do crazy things on your cell phone, or you see some weird light, or your radio picks up something, or your camera or your recorder picks up something, or you see something strange in the sky, or you have a really strange dream. That's higher dimensional beings trying to communicate to you in the third dimension, and there's no way for them to do that without it being strange and bizarre. And I really don't think that they have the ability to just choose to sit down and have coffee with you and explain it to you in the third dimension. I think there's a bunch of reasons for that, and I could be wrong, but so you need to understand that to leap from the third to the fifth is going to take an act of faith. At some point, you're going to have to choose to make that shift. If you're waiting for all of the evidence, like people who say to me, prove it to me, there's no proof I can ever give you. You'll have to find out for yourself. And even when that happens, you're still going to have to choose to go against your third dimensional programming. I could be wrong about that. Perhaps the solar flash event is that enough higher dimensional energy comes that everybody wakes up and then they have the ability to shift up. But so far, my experience up to this point is that it's taken all of my effort and my concentration and my commitment to continue to act contrary to my third dimensional hypnosis programming. And it's a daily, every time that they come and, I say that they're texting me. I'm lying in bed and I know that ETs want to come and they want to talk to me. I can feel their energy. There's a part of me that goes, because it just doesn't, it's afraid, it doesn't want to do it. But I do it anyway. So you might have experienced that. There's a lot of people coming to me who've started the interdimensional meditation and say, is it okay if I stop doing the interdimensional meditation? Which of course it is. You're free to do whatever you want. But I recommend that you keep doing it. Because what's really talking is your human mind trying to talk you out of the truth. That there are beings outside of this game. They're knocking on the glass going, wake up, come on, here's the door. But you're wrapped up in the illusion, and it's as you can see, look at how harshly people have been attacking me on my Facebook stuff. It's if I didn't have compassion and understand and realize that I would have been those people 2 years ago, I would take it very personally. But I don't take it personally because what I'm saying is so threatening to the third dimensional narrative that human beings can't help but respond that way. All right, so the bottom line of this is that I was completely wrong about how the world worked. In terms of the tinfoil hat, global cabal, that is not only real, it is far, far more real than even 95% of all tinfoil hat people believe. It's much worse. And the only way that the Earth will come out from underneath that is if true disclosure about the nature of extraterrestrials and the nature of the unacknowledged military human UFO program comes out. and all of the things underneath that, which I can't talk about on YouTube or Facebook. Until that happens, the third dimension is not going anywhere. That's the only way. And so that's the real battle. I have my doubts as to whether or not that'll happen, and I'm really happy if I turn out to be wrong. But in terms of how the world works and what's underneath all of the political and financial infrastructure of the world, it is exactly what all of the tinfoil hat people have said, and worse. So I was wrong about that. And I was wrong about who I am. I, like you, believed I was this guy who was born in Glendale, California in 1963, and I'm this tall, and I have this knowledge, and I have these gifts, and I've only been alive 60 years, and I think maybe I might have had a past life, but even then I'll just be this soul. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about who I am. I'm not that person. I am a being that is much more powerful and expansive in multiple dimensions, and I'm doing things in the universe on so many levels that my human brain can't comprehend it. But just because this part of me is focused on this third dimension and that's all I know, that's not who I am. And if you think you're just this limited person, this tiny person that's living in this big universe, you're completely wrong. And the way that you find that out is by finding out who you truly are in higher dimensions. That can be done. Ask the ETs to show you, and they will. They'll give you whatever you're willing and able to see and handle. Because again, they're your best friends on the other side of the glass. And it's like if you went up to the glass and said, show me what's really going on. They'll go, oh, good, there's this and this and this. They really want to show you. The question is whether or not you can understand it and if you're willing to hear it. I was wrong about the afterlife. I thought in the afterlife, we're just, when we leave, we're a soul, and we sort of go through the veil to a non-physical sort of place, and we float around, and all of that, and I was wrong. That's not what happens at all. It's completely opposite. This is the dream. What happens when we die is we wake up over there. We wake up in a higher dimension, and we still have a body. You still have a physical body, but you can do all kinds of magical things with it that you can't do in the third dimension. So the afterlife is not what we thought at all. This is the ghost shadow world. This is the underworld. When we think of the underworld being this dark, ghosty, sort of shadowy place, that's Earth. This is the underworld. And we wake up from it. Death and or enlightenment, ascension, is nothing more than waking up where you started and realizing that you've been asleep and in a dream this whole time you were on Earth. That's it. I was wrong about God. Now, I haven't had a formal belief in God since I walked away from Christianity. But so I sort of left it alone, and I really never believed in God. I was after Christianity. I'm much more comfortable with polytheism. I know because I've had personal interactions with polytheist deities, and to be fair, I had personal interactions with Jehovah and with Jesus. So you can do with that what you want. But I thought that there was humans, and then there was God or the gods. And even though I talked about the gods being holographic projections of you, even though I had learned that, even though that I in meditation had learned that everything is outside of me. Let me take that back. That everything outside of me is within me. Even though I learned in meditation, when I look at all the stars and the planets, that I'm looking inside myself. Even though I learned through Taoism and through Huna to understand that there is no such thing as a difference between me and everything else, that I'm one with everything, it was still pretty much just an idea. But now I know from experience because of my interdimensional experiences and training with ETs. I know that I was wrong about God. So when I tell you I'm God, I'm not doing it to say that I'm more than you are. Because if I'm God, so are you. And I'm inside of you. If you're watching me on a video screen, it means that this is a part of you that is communicating to you. Those of you that come to me and ask me to help you, that's a part of me coming to me wanting to, achieve equanimity. Now, how does that work? And yet we're all individuals with our own free will. This is the mystery of higher dimensions, but once you get there, it starts to make more sense. I can't explain it in the third dimension, but I know it because I've experienced it. And I was wrong about the gods. I have a much different understanding of the gods now. And I won't take the time to talk about it here, but there's a reason why I can choose to communicate directly, one-on-one, with every single deity that exists. And I have, and I do. I can summon any one of them, and they will talk to me directly, just like, I'm talking to you right now. I was wrong about who they are. I won't go any further. Maybe we'll talk about it more, but you'll find out for yourself if you ask. Ask the ETs and ask the universe to show you who the gods really are. Now, you might learn something different from me, but eventually we're going to get to the same place. You're going to know what I'm talking about. We'll be able to look each other in the eye and we'll go, the gods, huh? And we'll be able to just nod our head. Go, yep. It's not something anybody else can know unless they've experienced it. And lastly, I just want to say, one of the reasons I'm making this video is because, holding all this experience in is very challenging to me. This is why I teach, whenever I've written books, it's to get this out. And I'm making these videos because I'm doing it to keep my sanity. Because walking this line and knowing what I know is very hard, especially when I interact with people who don't know any of this. People who are just living the narrative. And I have people in my life that are living the narrative. They think that democracy exists. They believe in the power of their voice voting. They believe that they don't believe in the deep state cabal. They don't believe in ETs, and and I understand. And I don't bring it up. I usually don't talk to majority of people about any of it. Why would I? I'm talking something they don't believe, they don't want to believe, and or don't have any experience, don't have any interest in. But it makes it very challenging. How do I live in this world knowing what I know? And knowing, both the bad and the good, knowing what I know, and living in this world and living with people who are completely clueless. It's very hard. It makes you feel very isolated. I as much as I love the ETs, I love them, like my family. They're not human. They're not physically human. They can't give me the human connection that a physical human can give. And so when you want to be friends and connect with other humans, and they don't have any idea about any of this, you're not in any world. You're not in the higher dimensional world, and you're not in this world. And so if you're experiencing that, I understand. So we're going to have to create some kind of community so that we can all, just talk to each other. But it's a real balancing act, living in 3D and expanding in 5D, and waiting. One of the hardest parts is waiting for what I've been told is coming. I haven't been given a specific date. Every time I ask them, when is the ascension event going to come? They say, when you decide. Gee, thanks. But it's the truth. And that's because time is an illusion like anything else. And everything in my reality is my own projection. So when I get to the point that I'm ready to project 5D, it'll happen. It'll happen in my external world. That's just the way things are. Same thing true for you. But that's the most difficult part, is feeling like something's about to happen and waiting, not knowing if it's going to be 6 months or a year or 10 years, and having this feeling that it's right around the corner. That's a challenging thing to live through as well. So, I just want to acknowledge my humanity in all this. Sometimes the pressure builds up and it's really intense. I just have to, go surfing or go walk on the beach and just, cry it out, or talk to my teacher and just cry it out, because it's a lot to carry. So if you're experiencing that, that's okay. That's why I recommend that you have a teacher, have friends. And if any of this has reached you and you feel it and you want to go deeper and you don't want to stay on the edge, that's why all of these links are here. If you're looking at this on my Facebook page, go to my YouTube channel, which is @ThunderWizard, subscribe, and watch those videos. There's a lot more videos there than I'll be, longer videos than I post here on Facebook. And if you're already on my YouTube channel, subscribe. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, which you can find here at thunderwizard.com. Do the practices, but at the very least, do the free stuff. There's the free playlist, the Mao Shan Qigong Interdimensional Meditation 12 Steps to 5D. That's free to you on the playlist. Just do them. Read my books at michaelwilliamdenny.com. Even my earlier books, looking back on it, they're really great. We're talking in the same thing. I just, without realizing it. Without realizing it, the Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life is the most profound teaching even for the gods. It's one of the reasons that the ETs chose to initiate me into their understanding. And they've said it. They said, because you figured it out. We chose you because you figured it out. We live that. What you wrote in that book, we live that. All of us do. So get your hands on that book and read it. So that's all. Hopefully, especially if you're new to the channel and you didn't know my background, now you have an understanding. And I feel a little more sane, but I welcome you to come onto the Thunder Wizard site, the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel, subscribe, tell your friends about it. And those of you on the Thunder Wizard YouTube site, you can go to my Facebook page, The Path of the Thunder Wizard, and follow me there. Things are starting to blow up, and I hope it continues to blow up, and I hope I'm actually able to start, really given a platform to get this information out to more and more people. So I need your help to do that. And one of the things is not only share it, copy and paste and tell your friends about it, like, subscribe, and comment. Do the practices yourself. And if you can and you're so inclined, please subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong and support the channel, because that's what allows me to spend 24 hours a day making this my main focus in life. And I want that to continue, so I appreciate your support. That's it, my friends. I wish you all the best. I love you. And as always, if I don't get beamed up to the Starship Enterprise, and or the solar flash don't come, and or if I don't shift myself out of the third dimension, I will see you all very soon. Please take very good care of yourself, and know that you are loved deeply, not only by me, but by all conscious beings in the universe. Thank you again.